Fordham, adjunct professor of history at Charleston Southern University in the Citadel. And this morning I'm going to give you a couple of Gullah Folktales. Now, for those of you who don't know and not from the area of Charleston, South Carolina, Gullah is the lingua franca of Charleston, about Georgetown, South Carolina, down to Brunswick, Georgia. You had the Sea Islands, where you had people from the Mende and the Kise and the Gullah tribes who were brought to these regions to grow rice during the days of slavery. And the islands were so isolated, they kept much of their African speech, folkways, and culture than any other black people brought to the United States, with the possible exception of Louisiana. And so my grandmother was from Awendaw, South Carolina, and she would call me in the house when I was a boy by going, "Damon, y'all churn too trifling. Y'all better come on and y'all white books, y'all," and things like that. So for years, Gullah was considered this low-class dialect, and people sort of looked down on the person who spoke Gullah as ignorant and so forth. But people are now starting to realize that this is a connection between the culture of West Africa and the black culture of America. And one of the things that's great about the Gullah culture is that of storytelling and folk tales. And I'm going to give two of them to you today. Both I've heard when I was a boy, with the translations, I might add. The first one goes like this. Well, you know, after that big earthquake back in 1886, there been this gal, she been to walk down the street, and then the ground been to shake and the ground been to quake, and then the building been start to fall down, and the gal get down on her knee and say, "Lord, Lord, please come on down here, Lord. And when you come down here, Lord, and look on your children, please don't send your son Jesus, because he ain't no time for churn." Translation. During the 1886 earthquake in Charleston, South Carolina, there was this black lady who was walking down the street, and the ground began to shake and quake, and the buildings began to fall. And she was terrified, and so she got down on her knees and prayed, "Lord, Lord, please come down here and look after your children. But when you come down here, come yourself and don't send your son Jesus, because this is no time for children." Now, the second one goes like this. Well, you know, there been this gal who ain't never been on a train before. So she get on the train, on the choo-choo train, and the train been to go on around, and she been to looking around and graze. She see all them things going by fast and everything. So then after a while she fall asleep. Then while she been sleeping, the train gone in the tunnel. So then while the train been in the tunnel, the gal wake up and she look around with her big eye and say, "Great God, the bucker done run us on the ground." Translation. There was this lady who had never been on a train before, and when she got on the vehicle, she was amazed at what she saw, and her eyes began to dart around, but after a while she grew tired and sleepy, and she fell asleep. So while she was sleeping, the train went into the tunnel, and while it was in the tunnel, she woke up and looked around the darkness around her and said, "Good Lord, the white man has taken us down on the ground." So those are just two examples of the wit of the Gullah people through the use of folk tales. This is Damon Fordham.